Overwhelm is the symptom of a habit. It is not an emotion. Let's unpack that. I'm going to say it again. It's simple, but you have to wrap your head around it. Overwhelm is not an emotion. It is the symptom of a habit. Now I have a question for you. How many times have you been overwhelmed? I know my husband used to have a running joke, and he'd say, if I had $1 for every time you said, I'm so overwhelmed, I'd be a multimillionaire. That was my number one emotion that would come up. Now, you might experience overwhelm also. If you do, it stops you from creating help or creating anything else in your life for that matter. So let's go to some facts. Fact number one, your subconscious wants to keep you exactly the same as you are right now. Good morning. Exactly the same. It does not want you to change because it is safe right now. And so it wants to keep you exactly the same. But we say we want something better, right? We want to be healthy. Well, if we want something different than what we have right now, we have to do something different, which means we have to push against subconscious. Now, if you have had that experience of overwhelm, it's the habit of not being present. It's the habit of looking at all of the things you have to do instead of taking action on one thing. So when that emotion comes up, instead of thinking of all the things, we need to build that muscle between planning and action. So, for example, I love planners. I love them. It's different to dream and collect and think and plan about a planner than it is to execute the use of the planner. Good morning. So good to have you here. Good morning. So, to stop the overwhelm, we have to be in the present, not looking at all the things in the future that we have to do. And the more we cave to the overwhelm, the stronger our subconscious rules us, and the harder it is to create action. So start taking micro actions. You'll notice on this walk with me, you and I keep asking you, share with me, tell me, what do you think? Leave a comment basically. I want you to take micro action. Besides, I love getting to know you. The ultimate agenda, though, is you taking micro action because you're learning things. That's my goal, is that you're learning things, but the learning can add to your overwhelm. Taking action on something, telling me what was most important, telling me where you're going to start, telling me what your plan is, telling me, and taking that little micro action increases the chance of not going into overwhelm. Because here's what happens: women will get overwhelmed and then they stop creating. When you stop creating, you're not moving your health forward. And if you add up all of the times that you've been overwhelmed, you've spent a lot of time not creating. And remember, overwhelm is not an emotion. We're hardwired as human beings to not deal with negative emotions. And so if we're viewing overwhelm as a negative emotion, we're going to push it away and not deal with it, meaning it comes right back stronger. It's not an emotion. It's not an emotion. Say that with me. Overwhelm is not an emotion. It's the product of a habit. And the habit is looking at everything, living in the future instead of being focused in the present. So it really, walking away from overwhelm and understanding how it works increases the quality of your life because you build that muscle to live in the present. Shelly and I were talking yesterday, and we've had some software issues, and she was on a telephone call with one of the people from the software company, and at the end, they were not wanting to continue following through, so they kind of checked out and got on their phone, and they were not in the present, making a difference in the situation. We've all done that. All of us have done that. When we do, we increase the chance of overwhelm hitting us. But if you'll remember, overwhelm is not an emotion. Say it out loud, write it down, put it on your mirror. Overwhelm is not an emotion. It's the product of a habit of looking at everything. Now, there's sometimes we need to look at everything, but a lot of times we just need to be in the present and focus on one thing we can do right now. So as you practice that muscle of going from planning to action, that walks you away from the experience of overwhelm and builds your muscle of living in the now. All of that energy spent on overwhelm. So I always like, good morning, Sylvia. Good morning. I always like to have women think of their energy points in this way. If you have 100 energy points, and that's all you get for the entire day, 24 hours, you get 100 energy points. How many energy points are you giving to being overwhelmed? If we take those energy points back from being overwhelmed, we have more ability to create different things, to increase our energy and put our focus on something else. Good morning, Kathy. Oh, I love that. Lorene wrote it out. Overwhelm is the product of a habit. It's living in the now. So the next time overwhelm comes up, there's two things that I like to do. One, ask myself, what can I do right now? One thing that I can do right now that will help. The next thing I ask myself is, how long has it been since I've been outside? Because remember, this whole Walk With Me series, we're talking about the sunshine, pretty overcast here in Morro Bay. The sun rays are still there. How long has it been since you've been outside? Because that sunshine recodes you to your potential. Stepping outside in the sunshine is a beautiful action to help you walk away from overwhelm. So here's your action on this call. Here's your action. Here it comes. What would you do if you take all your overwhelm points and you fill it with something else? What would you do? What would you do with them? You need to connect to what you're losing by the overwhelm. So I want to know, what would you do? So I'm going to tell you while I wait for a couple of you to share with me and take that action and share with me what you would do. I'm going to share with you what I would do. I would spend time FaceTiming grandkids. I would spend more time watercoloring. I would spend more time outside in nature. Oh, move forward with your life. Yeah. And when you move forward, that means you're growing and creating and not being stuck. So determine what things you would do. I would practice on my hand lettering. I would be deeply connected with those around me and create more time to do that. So, do you see those things that I can fill those energy points that I used to do with overwhelm? Now, here's the thing, it's so simple. It's, it's like, oh, so simple. Overwhelm is not an emotion, it's the product of a habit. Building that muscle takes daily action. Daily action. Oh, Pat would make a quilt and start by cutting it out. Pat, I am in awe of quilt makers. And I thought, oh, I want to do that. It's not my thing to do. It is my thing to have deep appreciation for the beauty that other women create in their quilts. One of my favorite exhibits was at the D. Young Museum in San Francisco. It's one of my favorite museums. And they had the Amish quilts hanging, 5 colors, and the patterns were spectacular. They were amazing. Okay, so Allison just jumped in and said, I would love more quality times in my relationships. So Allison would take her overwhelm points and she would put them toward quality time with relationships that really meant something to her. If if I could get you to connect, overwhelm is not an emotion. You do not need to avoid it. You need to take action and teach yourself to live in the now. Quit looking at everything. Go from planning to action. Now, here's this really goofy thing. Oh, I want to know what Sylvia is going to do. I think maybe Sylvia and I could go shoe shopping with some of those points that we're not putting on overwhelm. Sylvia has a love of beautiful shoes like I do. Okay, I've always wanted to play the piano. I would be practicing and enjoying and bringing beautiful music into her home. I love that. Oh, get my books out and read about the organ. I love that. And start on my organ again. Oh my gosh, that's think of what you're creating instead of that overwhelm. So here's this little silly thing that I do, and it works for me. I don't know if it's going to work for you, but I'd love to know if it does. So when that overwhelm hits me, and it still does, I think, okay, what action am I going to take? One thing. And it doesn't have to be a big thing. In fact, usually the smaller, the better. And so I'll do that one action and then I'll celebrate like, oh, I'm amazing. Look what I just did. Look what I just did. And then I do something else and then I celebrate. I usually have some music on in the background because that helps me build that muscle. So say it with me again. Overwhelm is not an emotion, it's the product of a habit. It does not need to be avoided. And we can take those overwhelm points and put them toward doing something much more meaningful. Now, we're at the end of our time together today. And I want you to think of our mantra: sunrise, sunset. We start our morning with the sun. We end our day with the sunset. Sunrise, sunset. I want you to focus for the next minute on matching your breath with the sounds of this beautiful Pacific Ocean that's behind me. You ready? 1 minute, go. I've loved being with you this morning. I love these walk with me's. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye. Habit, habit, habit. Overwhelm is the product of a habit. It is not an emotion. Bye.